Welcome to the podcast for this week. Paul Kent, Steve Blocker-Roach. How are you, lads?
Matty, never been better.
Pre-COVID days, we're just about hitting the finals.
Wow.
Nice and warm, Matt. You can feel it in the air.
And water's getting a little warmer too.
And the sun just coming up as I get up early every morning.
Yeah.
Just a little bit earlier.
And it starts to get up at 10. Yeah, getting up at 10 a.m. and you're feeling it.
Yeah. It's like Cook Roper in the back of a car.
Pressure on coaches, that's the theme today, and it gets more and more intense all the time. 12 months ago, we're saying, boy, a lot of coaches under pressure. Well, it's gone up a lot again this year. 4 coaches sacked. Anthony Seibold in a situation where I can't remember a coach ever being under as much sustained pressure as Anthony Seibold has been. And today we focus on dealing with coaches under pressure, those who handle it. There's some that actually enjoy it. And with other coaches, sometimes that pressure just eats them up. And we're going to do it from the perspective of playing underneath a coach in a club environment when they're under intense pressure, and dealing with coaches under pressure from a media point of view, because we've all been in the media for quite a while, and that can be tricky. Chris Anderson once told me a coach doesn't know what sort of coach he's going to be until he's lost 3 in a row. Got to get his way out of it. Kenty, you deal with coaches under pressure on a daily basis. What are the traits of a coach under pressure?
Generally, Matt, they go through stages, to be honest. Denial's a big one. I've spoken to coaches before. I spoke to a coach a couple of years ago. I said, look, mate, you're in a bit of trouble here. And he said, oh, no, I'm all right, you know what I mean? Well, he probably lasted 4 more weeks. Some of them, they just sit in denial. Now, obviously, they don't want to fuel the flame, so they don't want to tell you what's actually going on there. But I do think if coaches are clever about it, they can save themselves. For example, Brad Arthur a couple of years ago, Parramatta were in the midst of a wooden spoon year, a lot of pressure on him. Brad Arthur was quite resolute in how to get Parramatta out of the problem, what he needed to do, and because of he was so clear about it, he bought himself time and was able to do it. One of the few coaches I've ever seen under a lot of pressure get himself out of trouble. Most of them, Matt, it's like it's the snowball effect. It just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And initially, if they're clever early on, they can stop it. If they're not clever enough, and they play the wrong game, play the wrong card.
What about the blame game?
Well, there's a bit of that too, and that's when you're starting to lose it, though, Block. So you've got to identify what the problem is and how you can fix that, and you've got to be correct in that. That's the important bit. It's one thing to be able to say, oh, this is what's going wrong. We've seen this in Brisbane. Brisbane have had 15 different reasons why they're going poorly this year. And they still don't know how to fix it.
You're like, here we go again, eh?
Well,
what is it this week?
Well, that's what it is. And see, the good coaches can fix it, and they generally fix it before it even becomes a problem. The coaches who get sacked because they can't identify the problem, or if they have identified it, they can't deal with the problem. Often when they've identified it, it's because of player revolt. Yeah. And by that stage, it's too late.
It's really interesting. A lot of coaches are better the second time around.
Much better, yeah.
You look at, there's examples like, Tim Sheens, Penrith to Canberra. Guys like Johnny Lang. Was at Cronulla for years, went to Penrith, won a competition. Even Anthony Griffin.
Is it a bit like a play? You got to play 60 games before you actually know what you're doing?
I think, Block, what it is, I think the irony of coaching, or the irony of a coach that gets sacked, is that when they get their head out of the fire and out of the oven and go, they get the clarity to realise where they went wrong.
Well, Matty, a real good example of that's Trent Barrett. Now, Trent Barrett made a lot of errors at Manly, and we had him the other night on 360, and we said, mate, what's different this time? And his answer, if I'm a Canterbury fan, him coming in, it would have encouraged me a lot, because he perfectly addressed what went wrong at Manly. He identified where he made his errors. He was honest about it.
Yeah.
And if you can be honest about the mistakes you made, then you can be genuine about how you fix it. And
isn't it funny? Like Paul McGregor is another one where Mary's under this intense pressure, and all of a sudden they told him, mate, that's it. You got your last game.
He interviewed different then, didn't he? He sounded relieved.
When you watched him, going into the game, mate, he's relaxed.
Down on the sideline.
He goes from Coach Paul McGregor to being Mary again.
Yeah.
He's more relaxed. Yeah. The side win. He's gone down to relax on the South Coast and having a few beers. I reckon when he's sitting there, he's relieved. Primarily, but he's also sitting there going, I get it now.
Yeah. Answer me this one, boys. coaches that get sacked, right? The same people that put them in there, that they convince to put them in there, are the same people that generally get rid of them. So what changes? The coach is the one that goes. The people who actually put them in there in the first place, nothing ever happens to them.
I think that players and fans are howling for something, a change. So they realise if the coach don't go,
I'm going to go.
then I might go.
The whole dynamics changed, though, and I think people don't sort of realise this. Back in the day, rugby league committees were kept, which is now called a board.
Yeah.
Okay, but the committee was kept very small. Members, they didn't like a lot of votes on the membership because you'd vote. Didn't like a lot of members because they could vote them out. They lost power of the membership group. So Canterbury for more than 20 years went unchanged, their boardroom. And Bullfrog just ran it with an iron fist.
He controlled it.
He knew how to control it, and they knew how to control the vote, the whole thing. And they weren't the only club. The good, strong clubs did that, and they ran the club their way. But over time, what's happened is we looked down at what was happening in AFL, where they had these massive memberships, which were bringing income into the game.
So that's how we make more money.
I remember as a kid wanting to join become a member of a football club, and the only way I could do it is if I already knew two members who could endorse my application.
Gotcha.
Now, I didn't. I lived up Central Coast. I didn't know anyone that was a member of the club, so I couldn't become a member. But the reason that was in place was because if I sent in, Paul Kent membership, and they said, who endorses him, Matty Johns and Steve Roach, the bosses of the football club go, well, who are they aligned to? Therefore, and so that's sometimes they'd knock you back. If you're with the wrong group, they'd knock you back.
You should have come to the Tigers. We could have rorted it somehow.
Yeah, we would have found a way. But that's the way it used to work.
Yeah.
And so, what happens now, though, Matty?
And does that buy their vote? Sorry, before you go on. So that would buy their vote too.
Well, they knew whether to pass your application or not because they knew which side you're going to vote, depending on who endorsed you. But what that then did was allowed them to then say, okay, if the coach was under pressure, if they liked the coach and he was good for the club or whatever, they just didn't care what the members thought.
Yeah.
But now that we've got this changing dynamic with the members, the boards know if we don't get rid of the coach, members are going to get rid of us.
Yeah.
So now there's so much more pressure on coaches to be successful very early in their careers and then stint at the club because the board is under the same pressure.
Channel 9, when my early years there, and you were there, Block, remember that my thing, like my first few years, at full time, I had the job of walking in to the winning dressing room, asking the coach for an interview, which was okay, but then walking across
the losers
and going to the losers, which was tough. But I'll tell you what, from both dressing rooms, I really got a great understanding of why coaches have stayed in the job a long time and had success, and why some coaches had a brief career.
Yeah.
So the coaches who had brief careers, you'd walk in there after a win, and mate, they were like a peacock. Their feathers were up, the chest was out. It's like they won the lotto, and they were celebrating like they won the grand final. Yeah. They were just so buoyed.
Over the top, you mean?
Over the top, and then you go in after they've been beat, say a month later.
Lucky to talk to you.
Mate, they're hunched over. They're actually pathetic. They look pathetic, and that mirrors the team. As a consequence, the team are riding the roller coaster as well, where the coaches that have had long, successful careers, so the three that really struck me, Wayne Bennett, Tim Sheens, Johnny Lang, for instance. Win, lose or draw, when you went in to interview Wayne, I'd say, Wayne, could I get an interview? He'd sort of just smirk at me and walk away. That was win, lose or draw. You'd walk up to Tim Sheens after a win or after a loss, and, mate, he just want to talk football about what happened during the game, because Sheens just loves talking about that aspect of the game. Johnny Lang, win, lose or draw, well, put it this way, with Langy, if you could judge how a coach went by the look on their face, you'd always say Johnny got beat. Yeah. Johnny'd always just be looking a little dour.
He never changed.
He never changed. Even grand final night when he won with the Panthers, he walked on the field and there was a look of panic on his face. And Vossi said, "How does that feel?"
He's paddling under the water.
And he goes, "Oh mate, I'm just terrified the alarm's going to go off." Yeah. But these coaches, they had long careers because they never ran the roller coaster. Didn't take that sort of stuff. Didn't take it out of them, and their team didn't ride the roller coaster.
Johnny was good. I interviewed him a few times when he was coaching. You asked him one question, and he'd talk for 15 minutes, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Sheensy was a bit like that too.
Yeah,
Go right into it, you know.
Sheensy was like that. away from your job. I remember.
Yeah, talking
I
about
realised
footy.
be really careful with Shoonsy. If you walk past and said, "Oh, Shoonsy, how's
How you
the
going?"
team going?" 2 hours later.
Yeah, what about us 2 weeks ago?
Yeah. What about you, Blocker? You know, in working with Channel 9, dealing with the coaches.
Yeah, I always found I sort of got on with them pretty good. Desi was the perfect example. Even just last week, I interviewed him before the game. So Desi and I toured together and all that sort of stuff, and it's a beautiful afternoon. My first question to him, I said, Desi, you love this back to the wall stuff, don't you? Like that. And I stopped. You know what he said? Oh, mate, we haven't played in the daylight for so long. It's such a beautiful afternoon here. I'm glad there's not 27. I said, no. I asked you like backs to the wall, don't you? And then stopped.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. And he's going, oh, mate, we haven't played in the
Yeah, it's good.
You know, I love it. I love the way that they throw off.
I tell you what's really interesting, isn't it? And dealing with the boys, how some coaches are better after a loss than they are after a win. Some coaches, when you walk in there and they've had a win, they can be real pains in the arse.
Oh, some are pigs.
Yeah.
Do you reckon that's because even though they got beat, they've seen big improvement in what they're trying to do?
No,
I just think some coaches.
you to everyone.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
It really
I
is.
tell you who was really, really good after a loss. Was great to talk to was Brian Smith after a loss.
Yeah.
In fact, I walked into Parramatta dressing room once at Paris Stadium. I thought, well, I asked him because, mate, he was just getting pounded all week in the media that the team had just been beat. It couldn't have been at a lower ebb. He was really under pressure. It was getting to the end. And I said, Smithy, any chance for a chat? Absolutely. And he stood there and we spoke for 10 minutes. Even at one point I said, Brian, are you thin-skinned? And he went, yeah, I am. And I went away and said, geez, he's an example of a coach who was at his best after they got beat to win.
I think he was also vulnerable then, Matty. And Brian Smith's an interesting case study because I got on very well with Brian Smith early in his career, and towards the end, we don't speak now because it just over time things just got so heavy on him, and just the pressure of everything, and he began to take every slight was an insult that would cut to the bone, and yeah, he gave me the biggest spray I've ever got from anyone in the game, Brian Smith, which I still remember.
What did he say to you?
Oh, well, I got him at a bad time block.
Were you thinking about going, listen here?
No.
You didn't have a lot of good times some years, Smithy.
I tell you what, it was the day I'd written a story, but remember when Parramatta and Canterbury played each other in the late 90s? Every time they played, everyone would write about the Canterbury four of Parramatta, Dimmick, Payne, McCracken and Smith. And always a story about, look, there's no problem. We've got no problem with them. And so I sort of did a bit of investigating and found that Canterbury had no problem with three of them, but they still had a problem with McCracken. McCracken hadn't turned up to Terry Lamb's farewell game. The other three had, and there'd just been a little bit of other stuff going on. So they were still off McCracken. So I just wrote a story basically around that. Anyway, so the day the story appeared was the morning where that afternoon Parramatta led Canterbury 18-2 in the preliminary final. 1998.
I remember that.
And they got run down. 10 minutes ago, they led 18-2. Finished the game 18, I think it was 18 all.
Yes.
And then in extra time, it was 32-20 to Canterbury. Canterbury just steamed home. And so I've come down the lift to the press conference, and as I've walked down the lift, Smithy's walked down the other lift. And I was just, after what had just happened to him.
Yeah.
And
you're on the back foot.
I was just, I let him say his bit.
What did he say?
Oh, mate, just, disgraceful. You don't go in that dressing room, he'll knock you out. And I said, well, let's go in and we'll sort it out. Yeah. No, you're not welcome in here. And mate, it was just on. And to be fair, mate, there was a crowd because it was in the public area at the bottom of the football stadium where the lifts are when you walk in the members area there. So I didn't turn it into a blue. I just let him say his bit, but it went for. Then a little bit of spittle was coming out, and in the end, I just thought, okay, and that was sort of beginning of the end for us.
So when you write stuff like that, and then someone attacks you about it, the belief of you writing what you're writing that doesn't waver, does it? When you confront them face to face.
Well, Block. When things start. In every coaching career, there comes a tipping point. Okay, nearly every coach has been sacked. Okay, so in every career,
being a coach, you're waiting to be sacked.
Yeah, you are. And so in every career, okay, at some point, that moment, begins to go, and the coach generally doesn't see it when everybody else sees it. I've turned up and I've had players tell me, mate, we're off him. We can't deal with this bloke.
Lost the dressing room.
Mate, he's a kid. He's carrying on, mate. He's got it's about this and that. So the players will start to whinge and moan about it. Their managers will start to talk about it amongst to the journos, all the rest of it. And the coach is often the last bloke that sort of really, he may hear it, but it's his last person to actually accept it. So often we're the front line in that, because we'll hear it and say, look, it's begun. And you can see it. Look, it's happening at Brisbane now.
Yeah.
And so you see that happening, and then what ends up happening is you write the story, and the coaches, they just want to let it out on you.
Yeah,
right.
You know what I mean? And they blame, a lot of them blame us. Mate,
And they go, I don't know where you got your information from. You can't say, can you?
Wock did that to me.
Can you?
Wock did that to me after I wrote about Blue with you and Wock at Newcastle. He rings me and he goes, I don't know where you get your information from.
You should say you'd be surprised.
I had one with Neil Henry one night because I like Neil.
Yeah.
And
he handled it badly, Neil. He really was affected.
And we got there, and it was when he had the Cowboys. And I went up for a State of Origin game, and everyone was telling me, oh, mate, he's about to go, and there's talk of Kevy taking over. Anyway, the next morning on Triple M, I said, look, the big story up here is that everyone's telling me that Neil Henry's about to go. That, you know, there's a bit of a revolt would play, but they think it's time to move him on. So that night, I'm sitting there having a meal just before I came in here, and I'm having and I go, oh, I don't know what, I don't know what this number is. Oh, well, I'll answer it. Hello, Matthew, it's Neil Henry. And I go, yeah, here we go.
Hello, Neil, how you doing?
He goes, I like the fact that you go on your radio show and talk shit. And it went on, and he goes, mate, it's just complete and utter bullshit.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. And he said, mate, I don't know where you're getting it from, but mate, what you spoke about is just complete and utter bullshit. I'm feeling a little pressure here. We're not winning football games. I don't need blokes like you to go on air and say those things. I said, okay, Neil, I get that. No worries, mate. Then we finish all right. Yeah. So I come driving into Fox Sports, and I thought, no.
Yeah.
So I pulled over and I rang Neil. I said, Neil, it's Matty Johns again. Yeah, mate. I said, listen, mate, I'm telling you, the chairman or the boss in there, he's going around telling people that you're on your last, mate. I'm just telling you now, you might think I'm talking shit. In my opinion, I'm not. And he conceded, and he said, I know.
Yeah. So that's what I was saying, mate. We're off at the front line because you hear it from, in your case, someone high up at the club. And in some cases, they want it out there because they almost need public opinion to start to shift with them. So they need to condition the public. Look, he's on the nose here. We're going to get rid of him. The fans are starting to bay for blood a little bit. So when they hear someone from the club or they gets out, oh, we're looking at change here, the fans go, okay, we'll give them some time and see what they're going to do. And off they do. And they'll let you have that go. And if the coach continues to lose, well, then they'll make the decision. And the fans, you got to keep the fans happy. They're dry. It's funny. It's amazing how fans...
They drive it.
Yeah.
I mean, the Dragons are the best example. Oust. Goes, I won't get rid of this coach.
Fail Mary.
Especially now with all that Instagram stuff. I don't follow all that stuff, but I know there's so much said every day about everything, isn't there?
Yeah, there is.
But Bozo was the best. In the 80s, Bozo would come in after a game and talk about completions, errors, like we completed, 22 from 20. No one would know whether he was making it up or not. But now, the way the stats are and everything, like everyone can see it. But in those days,
how did you go? How did you go playing underneath Blocker?
Who was your first coach?
I reckon it's a good story. My very first coach, and it was about change, was Frank Stanton was our very first coach. We had the youngest pack ever to play in the NRL. So the Tigers, we had some great players in Neil Pringle and Gary Spears and Steve Lavis. And then all of a sudden, all of us young blokes come through, and Frank comes from Manly. He's coached the Kangaroos in 82. Frank comes and coaches the Tigers, got rid of all of those guys. This is what I'm talking about, coach with, guts.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden he puts me in, Benny. Junior had already played one season with the Tigers. He puts David Brooks in. We're all 22, 23, Kerry Hemsley.
Yep.
But he changed the whole pack and the whole dynamic.
are top of the table.